go ahead and call it to order at 4:30. I guess, Kent, if we want to do alternates?
Yeah, I think we've got Ruthina Malone here for Lori Rotland of the Iowa City Community School District. Eleanor Dilks is here for Susan Mims of Iowa City. And I believe that is all.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
We'd like to consider approval of the meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? All right. Okay, we'll set the next board meeting date, time, and location. Looks like January 29th tentatively.
Yeah, unless that presents a major problem for the board, we've got our budget and a bunch of other administrative things to take care of in January, so that would be our preference.
I don't hear any big objections, so I'm sure that will work. Moving on, we've got any public discussion of any items not on the agenda? Pretty small crowd today for public.
Yeah, if there's none from the public or before the public speaks, I would like to take just a minute to recognize two outgoing board members and thank you for their service to the MPO. Lori Rotland. Lori's been on the board for 2 years, and she is an outgoing member for the Iowa City Community School District as their representative. And then Rockney Cole, neither could make it tonight, but Rockney Cole has been on the MPO board for 4 years. And thanks to both of them for their service, and we'll make sure they get their certificates.
All right. Thanks, Kent. Okay, moving on into the administration, we've got appoint nominating committee for the calendar year 2020 Urbanized Area Policy Board.
Yeah, thanks. Kent Ralston, Executive Director. At your next meeting, which will be in January, you'll elect a chairperson and vice chairperson for the 2020 calendar year for the Urbanized Area Policy Board. As you know, the chairperson is responsible for presiding over the meetings, and the chairperson, as well as myself, are also responsible for signing documents and things throughout the year. As director, it's been my practice to either meet with the chair or at least give them a call prior to the meetings to see if there's anything we need to discuss. And then, of course, the vice chair presides over meetings, and we have that same discussion if he or she will be presiding over the meeting. What we'd like from the group tonight is that you please consider appointing a 3-person nominating committee for the chair and vice chair for 2020. The nominating committee will then report at our next meeting where the chair and vice chairpersons will be nominated. As you know, Steve Berner, Mayor of Tiffin, is our current chair, and Terry Donahue, Mayor of North Liberty, is the vice chair. Both Mr. Berner and Mr. Donahue have served for 2 years in their current capacities, and our bylaws restrict them from being in those capacities any longer. So without further ado, if there's 3 people that would like to be on the nominating committee, you can simply let us know. I'm also available for questions if there are any.
Are you looking for volunteers right now, or?
Yeah, that'd be great, just by show of hand or anything else. We typically we try to get the 3 nominees to be, or the 3 persons to nominate to be from different communities, just so there's a little bit of a mix-up. But other than that, there's no real restrictions on who can be on that committee.
What kind of time commitment does it? It isn't real complicated.
Most of the time, I think it's handled either through emails or at a coffee shop, and it's simply sitting down and discussing who should be the next chair and vice chair. Last year, I believe it was worked out at this meeting, so it was done pretty quickly.
I was on the nominating committee last year. It was done very quickly.
It was record-breaking, yes. Yeah. So not a big time commitment, and we really don't need to know until a few weeks before our January meeting.
I'll volunteer.
Perfect. So Tom, Mazahir, and any other takers?
I'll go again.
Okay, thank you very much, Aaron. And Aaron Shane. So I would just ask that you get together informally one way or another, have that discussion. I also, on the backside of the memo, included the past chairperson's list. There is no real rotation on who becomes chair or vice chair, or if the vice chair becomes chair. There's really no restrictions as far as our bylaws are concerned. If you look at the list, I would say, just by terms of rotation, which there's kind of a rough rotation going here, North Liberty, University Heights, and the University of Iowa all kind of show up as getting down towards that, sort of the top of the list, so to speak. But again, there's nothing in the bylaws that says as much. So I will reach out to the nominating committee here in a few weeks and just see how things are going, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Kent. Moving on to 3B, to confirm which entities will nominate Johnson County representatives to the East Central Iowa Council of Governments Board of Directors.
Yeah, thanks. Under the MPO bylaws, each January, the Urbanized Area Policy Board appoints 3 elected official representatives to the East Central Iowa Council of Governments Board of Directors, as well as 1 citizen representative. The citizen representative may be any Johnson County resident who is not an elected official, and the appointments are made according to the rotation that's identified in your memo. First, 1 elected official seat is filled by the 2 largest entities, which alternate every other year. The current representative is from Johnson County, so the 2020 representative is scheduled to be designated by the city of Iowa City. Next, 1 elected official seat will be filled by the 3rd through 5th largest entities who alternate again annually. The current seat is held by the 5th largest entity, which is the city of Solon, and the 2020 representative is scheduled to be designated by the city of Coralville. Last, 1 elected official seat is elected from the remaining entities who alternate annually, and there's 7 of the remaining small communities in Johnson County. The current seat is held by Lone Tree, and the 2020 representative is scheduled to be designated by the city of Tiffin. And then regarding the citizen representative, Randy Lobsher is holding the current seat, who is a Johnson County resident. He has held the seat for 2 years, and there is no specified term limit in the bylaws for that citizen representative position. So I intend to contact Iowa City, Coralville, and Tiffin and request that they designate the official representative to the Board of Directors for East Central Iowa Council of Governments, which will be essentially ratified at your January meeting. And then what I would like from this group tonight is some direction on whether we want to ask Randy Lobsher to have a 3rd year to East Central Iowa Council of Governments, or if I should advertise for that position. And again, there's no term limit for that. I've not contacted Randy yet to ask him if he's interested. I know his attendance has been good. He's been giving us periodic updates once or twice a year about the happenings at ECOG, and I think he's doing a fine job. But I will take your direction on whether to give him a 3rd year or to advertise for that position.
If he's interested, I would say have him continue, because I was the representative 2 years ago, and he was on it then, and he's well respected. As you said, his attendance is good. He participated in the meetings and was always prepared. You could tell that he'd read the materials, and so he's an excellent representative if he's willing to continue.
And I think the learning curve is at least a year to 2
yes.
years, so I think
Yes.
his knowledge now going in a little longer would also be another reason to keep him if he'd still be there. So I would
If that's a
agree.
motion, I'll second it.
So moved.
Okay, great. So I will contact Randy. If he's interested, we'll offer him another year. If he's not, we'll of course advertise for the position. And thanks for that. One other thing I wanted to mention, and I've not given this a lot of thought yet, Rod Sullivan is the current county representative, and he'll be coming off this year because it's now Iowa City's turn, the 2 largest entities alternating every other year. Rod contacted me a couple weeks ago and had just mentioned exactly what we just talked about with Randy, is that 1 year on the ECOG board may not be long enough. You know, he said, I've just kind of got my feet wet, I'm learning what I'm doing, and now off I go. So he had asked basically if there'd be an interest in looking at sort of how our bylaws are set up and how we designate folks to sit on the ECOG board, to which I said, of course, they're the board's bylaws, and we can do with them what we will. What we just went through it's a little bit convoluted, but this was put in place, I think it was in 2011, the last time we had a major overhaul of our bylaws. And the idea was basically to get everybody in the county involved to the extent possible. I think some of the concern is that A, you're only on for 1 year, and that's not long enough. The other is that for some of the small communities, it's hard for them to attend. And if they're having a hard time attending, and some communities do, some don't, but if attendance is difficult and they're only on the board once every 7 years, is that really valuable for Johnson County as a whole? So these are just some things. Rod didn't have any specific suggestions. He said these are some things I've been thinking about. The East Central Iowa Council of Governments has a new director. As of about a few months ago, Karen Kurt is the new director. I did go as far as to reach out to Karen and ask her for how other counties that ECOG serves basically send their delegations to the board, and I've got some of that information. I've not really had a chance to synthesize it yet, but I'll do that. I think at our January meeting, we may want to have a discussion about this. Although the difficulty is that if we want to change the bylaws, the rural board also does that, right? So we're the urban board, there's also a rural board, and they would have to weigh on that as well. They only meet once a year. It's in January typically. So I'm kind of noodling through how to deal with all that, but I'll have more information for you in January. We can always hold a special meeting with the rural board if we need to mid-year, or we can be set up to make a change for the following year if we so choose. So just wanted to bring that up. Doesn't affect what happens this year so far, but I did let Rod know I'd at least bring it up and kind of start noodling through that process. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, moving on, we've got 3C, which is preliminary discussion of the fiscal 21 budget.
Yeah, thanks. Prior to the preparation of the MPO budget for your consideration each January, it's been my practice to basically discuss proposed changes to the scope of services or services we're offering with the board. As most of you know, administratively, the MPO is set up as part of the city of Iowa City and follows their budgeting procedures, including schedules for salaries and benefits and so on and so forth. As noted in your memo, the focus and purpose of the MPO remains to fulfill state and federal requirements necessary to receive state and federal transportation funds, to produce professional studies to support transportation-related decisions and capital project selection, to coordinate transit planning and transit reporting consistent with state and federal regulations, and that's for Iowa City Transit, Coralville Transit, as well as University of Iowa CAN Bus, to assist local entities with review of development proposals, which we've been very busy doing in recent years, and then also to serve as a forum for other regional issues and discussions whenever necessary. Preliminarily, it looks like capital expenses for FY21 will be are very similar to recent years. It's sort of a status quo budget, I would say. It includes a replacement schedule for traffic counting equipment and some of our software maintenance needs and that sort of thing. I'm not proposing any changes to the MPO level of staffing. We did that a few years ago and it's been working out very well. And I do anticipate about a 6.5% increase in the MPO's total budget. So this year's budget was about $700,000, and at least preliminary, it looks like next year's budget will be about $745,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. About 80% of that increase is staff salaries and benefits, mostly health benefits. So like everyone, the MPO employees aren't immune to rising healthcare costs, and that was about 50% of the total increase. We also will use about $230,000 of DOT funds, which we've done for several years now. That's the planning level funds that are provided to the MPO. And then I also anticipate utilizing a little bit more of our internal funds, basically funds that we did not spend in the last few years. We had about $10,000 in internal carryover we used last year, and we've got about $30,000 this year we'll probably use, which just defrays some of the assessments that all the communities pay. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, at least at this point in time, and then we will be bringing back the full budget for you for approval in January. Any questions about last year's budget? I did include last year's, a few pages of last year's budget in the packet just so you could see that. And again, you know, about a 6% increase in total budget is what we're anticipating. Any questions? It makes it easier when they don't change a lot.
Yeah.
I've noticed.
Not a lot of questions.
Right.
All
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kent. Moving on to transportation planning on 4A, consider action regarding safety target setting for the MPO as required by the Federal Highway Administration.
Yeah, thanks. My last agenda item, then we'll let somebody else speak for a minute. As you may recall, the Federal Highway Administration now requires the MPO set targets for 5 safety performance measures as part of the Highway Safety Improvement Program and report them to the state DOT by February 27th of each year. And in your packet, there is a chart that shows what those performance measures are. For each measure, we need to choose to either support the state's targets or we basically need to come up with our own targets. In either event, we're required to state how our annual projects programmed in our Transportation Improvement Program support the state's targets, and we will also have to do the same in our next long-range transportation plan that's due in 2022. Seems like a long way away, but we actually start that here in the next year or so. Similar to past years, I recommend that we again adopt the state's targets. I think this is the 3rd year we've been required to do this. And if at any time we feel that creating our own local targets would be a benefit, we can of course do that before February 27th of each year. But similar to past years, I'll tell you, we just don't see a clear benefit to doing so at this point in time. I've attached some supporting information from the DOT for your reference. And the Transportation Technical Advisory Committee did unanimously recommend adopting the state's targets at their meeting last week. If there's no questions, we'll be looking for some direction from the board, but I did want to point out that in that chart, there's some positive news, is that the fatality rate and the serious injury rates are both down. So the total number of fatalities and serious injuries, of course, are up because we have more vehicle miles traveled, but the actual rate is heading in the right direction, which is positive. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we'll look for direction on the board to adopt the state's targets or come up with some of our own targets here at the MPO.
What is the definition of serious injuries?
So I think a serious injury, I think the easiest way to state it is one where you are taken to a hospital. I think the way that is coded is by the police that are actually on the scene, so it's the actual collision report. And I think if you are transported to the hospital, it's always considered a serious injury, whether they really know that or not. And I think that's the best way they can do that. Minor injuries, I think, when you're scraped and you're scratched and you're shaken up a little bit, but you say you're okay, and you go on.
When I see levels of confidence, I really don't understand how they're applied. It's like on number 3, number of serious injuries, year forecast 70%, 75, 80. I couldn't get it through my thick skull how that is.
What page is that on, Terry, in the attached information?
I mean, regarded the rest of them too.
So for the serious injuries, yeah. So the way they do that is, let's see here, which line's which. One is the actual number of serious injuries, and one is the predicted. And then when you get out to sort of well, it's a little bit hard to read, but once you get out to 2020, the computer's actually, the model is actually modeling what they think it will be, and that's what they're setting those targets at. I mean, that's,
So
in
basically
layman's terms, that's how they're doing it.
So that basically that relates to really confidence level of,
Right.
of the.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're working on averages. I don't know what the actual confidence, I'm sure it's in here, what the actual confidence is in these, but looks like 75% is what they're using. It looks like at the bottom of page 4. Doesn't sound all that confident to me, to be honest. But I think historically, if you look at what they're modeling and what the actual numbers are, it's doing a fairly good job. Sorry, I can't answer your question better, Terry.
You did all right.
Ken, I know we probably don't have much data here to look at, but I was just thinking of, usually I suspect these collisions tend to take place on our major roads, our major thoroughfares. And one that came to mind, so the question I was thinking of was where we've taken measures to try to address collision rates and reduce them. Where has that happened? And so one example that came to my mind would be Mormon Trek, and I don't remember how long that's been in effect. But do we see? Can you tell even at this point if collisions are down?
So with respect to 4 to 3 lane conversions, like on Mormon Trek, thus far, I would say no. We don't really know if they're working. Only because we've got a ton of data before, because both First Avenue, Mormon Trek, and Iowa City, I think you're all probably familiar, but were 4-lane facilities are now 3-lane facilities, 1 lane in either direction with the center turn lane, and then we've added bike lanes on both corridors, which is sort of irrelevant for this. But for First Avenue, we had, I think, 1 full year in Iowa City, 1 full year of post-conversion data, and it was about a 25% reduction in all collisions.
So there's a good example.
Which is about what we expected. However, I would caution you that that's only 1 post-year of data. Hopefully it gets better than that. And for Mormon Trek, it just really finished up this year, so we really haven't had enough post-construction data to really get a good feeling for that. But the data would suggest that somewhere between 20 and 30% might be a good range, you know, maybe even a little higher in some instances. But I think when we spoke to the Iowa City Council about changing those, it was about a 25% reduction is what we were hoping for.
And do we know what's happened with the speeds on Mormon Trek yet? Have you measured that?
We don't, but we will soon.
Okay.
The speeds on, I do know the speeds on First Avenue are down. We have, when we collected the collision data, we also collected some speed data, and the speeds in both directions were down pretty substantially.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You can only drive as fast as the person in front of you
right.
now, which is what's helping that.
Self-regulating that way.
Right. And I can get you that. We've got that data, so I can get you that.
Super, thanks.
Any other questions about this one?
Otherwise, you are looking for action on this, right?
Yeah, and as I mentioned, the technical advisory committee unanimously recommended we adopt the state's targets again, which I think will be the third year. I believe Des Moines might be the only, and not that this matters so much, but I think Des Moines might be the only one that's either considering adopting their own targets or already have. I'm not sure which one. Most MPOs are adopting the state's targets just because it's, I think, labor intensive to come up with your own targets, and then if we're already working towards reducing collisions and making things safer, I don't know that a lot of MPOs have seen a lot of value in making your own separate target.
I move that we adopt the state's safety targets.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Could I just ask real quick, why is Des Moines considering making their own targets?
I don't know for sure. That's a good question. Des Moines spends a lot of time doing things that other MPOs don't, and I think that's because Des Moines is they're a standalone MPO, so they have a little bit more staff and a little more resources than a lot of us do, and I think for all intents and purposes that might be the reason. I mean, they literally just have more time to kind of hone in on these things, and they do a really nice job with a lot of their plans, but I think that might be the reason.
Follow-up
Just a
question,
simple-
then. How much different are their targets than what the states have been in the past if they've been doing this?
Well, the targets would clearly be different. For instance, you know, the number of fatalities would be not 345, as you know, that's the state's total. So I don't know what they are. I don't know what they've actually come up with, but whether they're meeting them or not, I think is the question, and I don't know the answer to that either, to be honest.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's not a very good answer,
That's
Chris.
sufficient.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right,
Thank you.
thanks, Kent. Moving on, we've got 4B. This is an update on the Metro Area Bike Master Plan, and you're ready to go.
Hi, I'm Sarah Walls, Associate Transportation Planner with the MPO. Many of you know that we're updating the Metro Area Bike Master Plan. This plan is different than the 2009 plan, which was the last time we adopted a Metro Bike Plan. You probably know that Iowa City went on its own to adopt its own master plan for bicycling. That's due to the sort of density of bicycling that we have related to the university in downtown Iowa City. And so this master plan looks at North Liberty, Coralville, Tiffin, and University Heights primarily, but it does look at continuity with things that are happening in the county and in Iowa City. Happily, Coralville and North Liberty are very proactively building upon their robust off-street trail system and the system of side paths, which are the wide sidewalks that are along roadways. And so this basically reflects what already exists in their plans. There were a few suggestions in communities, but it's basically building on that. And then it's looking at, the plan looks at all of the programs and policies that support bicycling. So everything from youth education to wayfinding to making sure that the regulations between communities are in general agreement or at least not in conflict. So it picks up on all of those things. We've been working with this with representatives of the Regional Trails and Bicycling Committee for the last year, and now we will have an open house on November 20th where the public can come in and look at recommendations. The draft of the plan is also posted on the MPO's website. I should say that one of the most exciting things and one of the things that the plan looks forward to in the next 5 years is the connection of the regional trail system to Tiffin, which will open up a lot of opportunities. It will make us all feel like one connected metro, and so a lot of the projects and rides that bicycle organizations and other organizations sponsor can now connect to Tiffin in a way that they haven't been able to before. Then outside the metro, Johnson County is completing its connections from the regional trail system to the north to Lynn County, which connects into the Cedar Valley Trail, which connects all the way up to Waterloo. So that is an opportunity to bring bicyclists in and opens up opportunity for bicycle tourism. And in the last year, actually last 2 years, the Convention and Visitors Bureau has really taken an interest in this, in promoting bicycle activities, the trails that go through all of our communities, and the events. So I think we're going to see in the next 5 years a lot of really exciting things happen, and being connected to Tiffin is probably one of the most exciting things in the metro area, to make us feel all like one community. So, any questions about that? Well, I'd encourage you to take a look at the draft plan that's up, and then if you can attend the November 20th event, which is at Van Allen Elementary in North Liberty.
Any questions? Doesn't sound like it. Thanks for the update on that. Okay, moving on to 4C. This is an update on the MPO Trail Count program.
Yeah, so the board doesn't usually get to see this, but we wanted to just make you aware, and this is something that we work on, again, with the Regional Trails and Bicycling Committee, and there are members from each community on that committee. Every year, we do counts along our regional trails and side paths, and also some of the more localized trails and side paths. And that's a list that's approved by the Regional Trails and Bicycling Committee. We have about 20 to 30 points that we count, and we do them in rotation. We try to get a count every second or third year on important trails. Obviously, there are things that influence how many bicyclists are biking, and I should say that we measure those basically from May to October. So each of those points will be measured for a week-long period during good weather, prime bicycling weather. However, the weather changes from year to year and from week to week, and so weather has an impact. Road closures or openings, additional connections to the trails and side paths have an impact. So we don't so much focus on the numbers for any individual year, any 2 years, but we sort of look for trends over time. And bicycling along the regional trail system, especially places like the North Dubuque Street Trail is a good example, and connections all the way down to Terry Trueblood Recreation. Those are growing. We're seeing a trend that more and more people are bicycling along those areas. So it's just something that we keep track of, and we look for a positive trend over time. And so that's what we've presented to you is those places where we did a count this year, and showing the trends that we have so far. Along some of our trail sections, we have almost a decade's worth of data, others just a few years.
This is great. I've lived in a lot of communities, we live around a lot, and this is the first time I've ever seen anybody watch their trail network. So I think that's fabulous. It helps for operational and infrastructure improvements over time, and allocating those dollars, so I'm impressed. This is cool.
So hopefully it's a number two that communities can use with grant writing or with other promotions for the community. So.
How accessible is this data? Because I agree that this is really terrific. We know this as policymakers in the county over the last 5-10 years that this has been important, but to put a number to this and say that it's getting used, how accessible is this data? Is this something that we can share?
Yeah,
look in on it.
And we can provide you, if you wanted to email me,
okay.
We can provide you with counts that we have at other points in your community. Maybe we didn't take a count there this year, but we can give you past information. And I should say, one of the folks on our technical advisory committee had asked about, is this, sort of an annualized, and it's not. This is just meant to be reflective of during good weather, because we know that for example, right now, there probably aren't a lot of bicyclists out on a majority of the trails, though you'll certainly find them on some, but this is reflective of during the bicycle season, which we sort of say is roughly May to October, on an average day, that is probably what you'd find along that trail.
Yeah, we typically don't ask the board for locations where you might want counts, but there's no reason the board can't let us know where you want counts. We typically ask the technical advisory committee. This year we even put trail counters on Coralville's single track trail.
Right.
Off of, near Camp Cardinal, and we left them there for about a month. So we're even getting data on some of the off paths now.
And I should say that Johnson County now has its own counters that are similar to ours, and I know that I heard from Brad Friedhoff that at one point up near in the far north along the trail system, I think they had 1,000 riders, something like 1,000 riders in one day or one weekend. So, when I talk about those connections for the regional trail system and tourism, I mean, it's really growing. There's a lot of interest.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the commuter trail, the trail First Avenue, we're putting back the bridge over the Clear Creek. See what the count is, on First Avenue, and then when we put that trail back into Rocky Shore Drive, how the commuters will get on that.
And that's a perfect example,
yeah.
I think, is that's really a vital trail connection
Right.
that's being replaced, and
Yeah.
we would expect that with all of the growth in residential development along that corridor,
Right.
that trail, rather than riding on the wide sidewalk, is really
right.
much favorable and is a really easy commute
Right.
over to the university campus. So that is one that we'll be keeping track
Yeah.
of.
Okay.
Sarah, how much do these counters cost, these trail counters cost?
About $800.
Okay.
And do you have any numbers for the off season? Or, just an idea of how much they're used?
We haven't been doing counts in the off-season, but we have offered that in certain areas. But we don't have any historical data on that. But it is something that we can do if communities want. We can leave them out.
Another interesting spot is 965 out by the classification center. We're with North Liberty. That's going to be it's paved this year. That's going to be clean year round, so that will be a commuter link. It will be a commuter like North Liberty to Coralville. So
Right.
that's another one.
Yeah, and I should be clear that when we count, so it's counting both pedestrians and bicyclists, so it won't differentiate, but it is the use of that multi-use trail.
Yeah.
Is it directional?
No.
Do you ever get into the purpose of why people are using it? Is it for recreation or for work or?
No, we can look at weekend versus weekday, which might give you some idea, but no, we haven't been able to do that.
The other thing we do, we also collect the same data where we actually differentiate between bikes and peds, and whether the bike is on the street or the bike is on a sidewalk with all of our intersection counts. So this is all midstream sort of wide sidewalk / trail counts, but we also collect that data for all of our intersection counts, and we have hundreds of them. And we've been doing that for, maybe the last 10 years or so. We've added that into our counts. So we do peak hour counts for all of our other studies, signal analysis, roundabout analysis, always stop studies, that sort of thing. But we actually have been doing that for about 10 years too now, and that is directional, so we know which direction folks are traveling at intersections.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of data.
Good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. We got 4D. This is an update on the Cranek Phase 3 passenger rail study. Brad?
Yeah, the Phase 3 passenger rail study is back on track, so to speak. It's been a while. It was supposed to be concluded, I think, last December of 2018. So it's a little past due. The issue was the ridership model and the methodology that would be accepted by the Federal Transit Administration. That's been worked out. We need that to be accurate as possible in order to develop the financial forecasts that are required for any future grant application through FTA. So they had to approve that. There's a special onboard survey that has begun. I think it's 2 or 3 weeks worth. We'll have people riding buses. The consultant will have people riding buses doing surveys, and it's mainly on routes that serve the University of Iowa. So they're obtaining origin destination information, but they're paying special attention to really 4 routes. The CAMBUS Research Park route, and then 3 routes in Coralville. It's 10th Street, Express, and the Lantern Park routes. These are routes that serve the same travel market as the proposed passenger rail would. So that's what they're concentrating on. They plan on gathering 12 to 1,300 surveys, so it's considerable. The issue we had originally with the original contract, we thought that this work would be included in the contract. The consultant informed us otherwise, and so there was additional funding required to complete it. That was the hang-up, that and the FTA approval. Iowa DOT and the Cranek Railroad stepped up and are paying for the additional survey work, and that's where we're at right now. So hopefully by January, February, we'll have the numbers we're looking for, and we'll bring that back, and then there'll be some more discussion. So, any questions on that?
Yeah, I just want to elaborate just one thing too. So Brad mentioned it, but there's no additional cost to any of our MPO communities. Brad was very polite when he said that we thought that the survey was included in the original contract. It was included in the original contract, but the consultant disputed that. Cranek Railroad and the DOT just said, we'll just let it be and we'll end up covering the extra cost. So there's no extra cost to our communities, but I think we had a difference of opinion on what was actually in the contract with the DOT and Cranek, but it's all going to work out at the end. And as Brad mentioned, we should get this a little bit after the first of the year.
How much was that extra expense for this survey?
We never saw the numbers, but I think they're in the neighborhood of about $100,000. The entire contract was only $100,000, so they literally doubled the contract amount. It was of my opinion that probably we may have wanted to take legal action, but I don't think the DOT and Cranek wanted to do that. So we're a little bit out of the picture now insofar as that goes, but we'll get the full study done, hopefully not too long after the first of the year, and we'll just be a little bit behind schedule.
Great movement forward. Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Thanks, Brad. All right. Other business, an update from Johnson County staff on significant community projects.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Greg Parker, Johnson County engineer. I prepared a 45-minute PowerPoint presentation. Just kidding. No, we're gonna be in and out here in a couple minutes. I know your time is valuable, so thank you for allowing me to come in and chat with you. What I'm passing out to you as you get around, I have 2 sheets. I believe I did this last time that I was here. 2 sheets this is our 5-year road program. This document here, it's in that Excel spreadsheet format. It is tied to the map. This document here, so they are tied together, and I have to tell you, I'm glad that I have 11 by 17 because I can see it better. So you wouldn't like the 11. It's too tiny, too small. Okay, so what I'd like to do is, if we get these around, wait a minute. These documents are available on the Johnson County website through the secondary roads area. Go into the 5-year road program. If you have a computer and access, you can find it now. Or a phone or whatever you have in front of you. I brought 14 copies, and I'll leave this if somebody wants it. So I think I've counted that right.
We'll meet in the
When you go to the secondary road, where is it at?
Johnson County Secondary Roads Department, and then it should be a tag on the left side, 5-year road construction program, and you should have both documents available there. I think the drafts were pulled down. We didn't realize that the approved documents weren't on there, so last I was told they were all good to go. Okay, everybody has it. Hopefully, yes.
Everybody got the spreadsheet and the map.
Everybody's good.
So
I need a map, yeah, I think we got shorted one over here.
So if you look at the spreadsheet, on the left side, you'll see 5-year ID at the top of the page, on the left side. And each one of those, it says 19A, B, C, D, E, and you go down and it'll M, 19, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 20, A, B, C, D, E. So the number designates the year that we're planning for that construction to take place. They are not in order of any specialized project. We just listed them the way they are. So if you see your project as number 1, it purposefully was not put there for that reason. Otherwise, based on the year, if you look on the left side of that document, you'll see fiscal FY 19/20. So that covers the current fiscal that we're in, the summer construction 19/20. And it also can carry into the spring of our fiscal 20, and our fiscal runs from July 1 to June 30. Pretty standard. We have the first 5 on this document, the first 5 that are on here. I have to explain this to you because it takes just a couple minutes. These are by funding source, just the plain black and white ones are funding. The green ones are by bond, which the board is bonding for those construction projects. The purple ones are what we're doing in-house with our maintenance staff. So maintenance, reconstruction program, or rehabilitation program. This is what our maintenance people do, and so on. So we have one, should be 5 years on here. This would be the immediate year, would be the first white, green, and purple. We go white, green, and purple, so it defines the funding source and the year that we're planning to do the construction. Now I'm going to jump you to the map. Pretty simple. If you look at the first document, 19A, the first line, you'll find 19A on the map, and that shows you the location of that project. So if we're looking for 19A, bear with me, I don't have these down either.
965 north.
There you go, 19A. So that would be a project of interest to this group because it is near and dear to everybody's hardest part of construction. Unfortunately, it did not get accomplished. This was a very aggressive construction schedule for my department. We had almost $20 million of construction, which is phenomenal for us. And it is planned for spring letting. So some of those expenses will come out of our 20 fiscal, but it'll carry over to the next fiscal because it will be completed after June 30. Pretty simple. Mm-hmm. So from an organization standpoint, do you have any questions about how these 2 documents are set up? You'll just have to hunt and find where the 19As, the 20s, the 21s, and the 23s. But this is our construction program that has been approved and adopted by the Board of Supervisors. It is done annually in March. We have to have it submitted to the DOT on or before April 15th, which we do, so that's why in March we have the board approve this. So next year, coming up, pretty short, is we will be adding another year of construction of projects to this list. So stay tuned, check the website, and you can get that all updated for the draft and the process before it's approved by the board, which is done typically in March, end of March. Projects of interest to us, Highway 965, I just explained that one, that would be 19A. And I'm going off the immediate year that we're currently in, so that would be the top of the spreadsheet. We have a couple of bridges, Ely Road 505, that will be a spring letting. It's a phenomenal, complex project, lots of environmental issues on that, and we're dealing with the Corps. I think we've worked all those differences out. We're looking at a spring letting for that project. The 140th Street project, this is the Sutliff Road, completed, done. Another bridge, completed. Now we jump into the green projects, 19F. 120th Street project, this runs from Highway 965 west all the way to the county line. That project, we did get our intermediate course on, but we had to shut it down. This year was not a good construction year. I'm sure you guys are all aware of that. I mean, it rained until, the end of June, and then we get a short window of construction, and then Mother Nature hit us, a couple weeks ago. So not good for us. We had to shut the project down. We needed another week to finish that to get the surface course on. Isn't going to happen until next year at this point. So it's kind of the same thing I'm sure you're hearing from your public works directors. Just not a good construction year. Jumping on forward, Herbert Hoover Highway, that phase 1 of 3, and this is from Interstate 80 east to Wapsie. we decided to combine 1 and 2, Phase 2 together as one project so we can shorten the construction timeline to 2 years instead of 3. And so that Phase 1 will be pushed out, and Phase 2, the next green project and the next group year, those two will be tied together. So we're looking at a February lighting timeline. It'll be a full construction season next summer. Let's see here, Old 218 River, well, that was a project 923. It's over by the county fairgrounds. That was accomplished this summer. Hopefully everybody's driven it and they love it because it's way better than what it was. And we're glad that the board had us put that on the 5-year road program. It was direly needed, specifically due to all the activity that's taking place out there with the Jingle Cross and the bike rides that are taking place. So it was a very nice addition. That was a joint project with Iowa City. Excuse me. And then the purple projects, again, as I referenced, those are done in-house. And these also are listed on the map. So if you look southeast Iowa City, several of those projects were completed this summer. Some were not. The north project up by Shueyville was not completed. We got all the pipes down, but we just couldn't get the rock down. So we'll have to wait till next year to get that done. So jumping into forward years, would anybody have any questions about anything that would be you would have a question on, near to dear to your heart, or have an interest in discussing? Well, if no questions, or hopefully this is all laid out pretty simply and easy to understand. That's our goal. And again, the documents are available on Johnson County website. I think you said you found them.
When I touched it, it says this site can't be reached, so I don't know.
Uh-oh.
I get almost
I know it's
there.
not secure, so we have
Almost there.
no problem. But if you do not have any question for me, that's pretty much what I had to report to you. We're aggressive from a secondary road standpoint. We're very fortunate to have a board of supervisors that supports our operations. We will continue to do so as long as the funding is there and the staff can accomplish what we're expected to do. So, seeing good things out there. It's crazy in Johnson County right now. I mean, it's wild. We're seeing cranes all over, and busy year. It's going to be another busy couple of years ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
All right, the last item on here will be the Severson Charity Challenge, or Severson. I think I said that wrong.
Yeah, Severson, Linda Severson Charity Challenge. Every year I come to talk to you all about this. For the past 8 years, we've sponsored, the MPO has sponsored the Severson Charity Challenge in honor of Linda Severson, who was the MPO's Human Services Coordinator from 1994 until she passed away in 2011. Linda was known for her charitable nature and for compelling other people to get involved in charitable works, and so this is a way to honor her. And so we've done it for the last 8 years, and the criteria we've used for judging who wins the cup is the increase in giving over the previous year. Last year's winner was North Liberty, and so I'm just here to see if the MPO wants to continue on with that tradition.
Sarah and I debated at some point in time, no one on the board will have worked with Linda. As time passes, and we know everyone's got a 1,000 charitable events and donations and things they do. So we're happy to do it as long as the board's happy to do it. Very good.
Continue.
Go for it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think that's it, except for adjournment.
So moved.
Motion and a second. All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Aye, we're adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.